Thank you very much for the presentation, Bob. I believe that I am one of the few overseas doctors of this Congress. So I want to say to you that Porto Alegre is a city in the south of Brazil, in the extreme south of Brazil. We are the capital of the southern Brazilian states, and we do from border with Argentina and Uruguay. I trace a kind of a presentation outline that could separate it in three moments. My presentation: the past, the present, and the future of sports medicine and related to exercise. Going to the past, we should start with the ancient period, perhaps with the Chinese. The Chinese in the year 2800 before Christ, they had a very good emperor, Shennong. And Shennong was responsible basically for the idea of classification of the vegetables and the leaves and the teas. But also he starts to make acupuncture. It was the beginning of acupuncture in China. And it was one guy that almost relate exercise with health, but not too much. We had a good experience in Egypt with the priest of that time, but really the man that was important for us was from the Mughal Empire, what's today Punjab in India. That was a doctor with the name Susrota. Susrota lived about 1,600 years before Christ, and he was the first guy that noticed how exercise could be useful in some disease. At that time, the cities in India, they fought very much, and he notes that during the war, the diabetics practically disappear from the people and come back after the war. And so he was curious, why in the war we don't have too much diabetics? Of course, they did not call at the time diabetics, but they knew that the urine was a little more tasteful, let's say that. And he had a difficult system to measure the glucose in the urine, and he used to measure with ants. And he put some ants and some urine, and if the urines go to the ants, the guy was diabetic, because he had glucose in the urine. So he notes that during the war in a city against an army that came to take the city, the ants did not go to the urine. But after the war, they come back. So he decides to sustain the war. That is, to make a program of exercise simulating a war in the intervals of war. So the program was basic to run in elephants and to fight, to train fighting. I never understood running in elephants because I said that's a program for the elephant, not for the guy. But one day in Pakistan, I had the chance to go in an elephant, to run an elephant, and it was like aerobic low impact. I had one only point of sustentation, and I was completely crazy on the elephant. So I understand my heart rate goes up, so I understand the system of Susrota a little bit. So let's say that the idea that do exercise helps the health of the people come from practically 1,800 before Christ. That's what I mentioned to you, the exercise they use. And then we come to the Greek period. That was a period perhaps 800 years before Christ. And in the Greek period, what I think that's important to notice is that exercise changed from disease to health people. And basically, Esculapio was the first guy that created a hospital, the idea of the hospital. So he has a temple that we understand now that it's a hospital, that he treats the patient, clinical and surgery, and he had also a theater. That's one of the best theater of Athens in his temple, because it was clear for Esculapio that to treat a disease, it was more than to treat a disease itself. It was also important to train the brain of the people. So Esculapio understands this biopsychological approach of treating a human being 800 years before Christ. And then we came to the Olympic Games, to the ancient Olympic Games, that was based in the idea of Plato, that the man must be beautiful, because the man is the temple of the God. So to pray to God, you should start to pray with your own body and make a beautiful body, make an athletic body. And so he starts with the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games was a religious festival in the old times, and it was done in the temple of Zeus. And basically, Olympia was the area where they had the gods there, in Monte Olympus, so they honor the gods there. And the idea was to honor the god, to get the best physician, the best athlete, and this athlete would represent health in old Greece. Of course, they had an idea of 4 elements. That was the basic idea of the Greek medicine. And they tried, through exercise, to modulate these 4 elements and sustain harmony. Harmony was the most important word in the time of the Greeks. Then we move to the Roman period. Now we have already 2 important things that were discovered. Exercise is good for disease, exercise is good for health people. But the idea of how much exercise was not clear. And probably the people that start with the idea of prescription of exercise was the Romans. Celsus in the year 0, he was a very intelligent physician. He notes that sometimes he applied exercise to a patient, and the patient did well. Sometimes he applied exercise and the patients died. So he said, well, what I'm doing wrong here? So he discovered that the wrong thing was how much exercise. So he recommended the patients to do enough exercise. How he defines enough in this time? How we have no watch, no heart rate, no lactate, no ergometer. So the only thing that Celsius noticed was the sweat. And he mentioned to the patient, please go in a crescent exercise in intensity until you start to sweat. And then you stop. That's the level that you should sustain. And if we see today in the physiological lab how much is that, it will be around 2 to 4 milligrams of lactate, perhaps 60 to 80% of